Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Japan once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last couple of years. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're pretty solid all round, although they do quite a few different IPAs. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before. It's one that I know they can do pretty well, and it's a little bit stronger than the last one that I tried in this particular style category too. And this is also a style category that you don't find all that often actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head over to Japan. We are going to go to Tokyo and remain in Tokyo Prefecture, but we're going to go out to the west of the main city to a little place called Okutama, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Vertere. So this particular beer is called Zenobia. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is a sour triple IPA. So yeah, if memory serves me correctly, the very first beer that I ever tried from Vertere was a sour double IPA. So yeah, this one obviously being a triple IPA is a little bit stronger. But that sour IPA that I had from them before was pretty damn good actually. In more recent times, I think it's just been kind of regular IPAs and stuff like that I've had from them. And most recently I had an Imperial Stout too, which was really well done in fact. So these guys are a very solid all-round brewery these days in my opinion, but definitely one of the up-and-coming ones in Japan that you should check out if you get the chance. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. The Zenobia 10% sour triple IPA from Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture over in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vertere before, and I will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist, which is being added to pretty regularly because I'm based over here in Asia now, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit once again about Vertere. So, Vertere, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Okutama in the western part of Tokyo Prefecture, about 1.5 hours train from the centre of the city. But the two men behind the company are Hikaru Suzuki and Kage Tsujinogi, who is the brewer. But apparently the two had dreamed of starting a company together since they were in high school. They were high school classmates. But Kage worked in a brew pub called Koenji and then spent 3 years learning to brew and was also perfecting his own recipes at the same time. But the company started in a 70-year-old traditional house about 30 seconds from the front of Okutama train station. And apparently it took them over 6 months to renovate this house and get it ready to host the restaurant and brewery. But they started off with 3 taps in 2015, and this system was soon upgraded to 10 taps, and all of these are now their own beers. But the brewing takes place in a small hut of about 7.5 square meters behind the restaurant and bar counter. I will point out that that measurement may be wrong because in Japan they like to use tatami mats, which is a different measurement actually, but 7.5 square meters is the measurement that I have. But at the moment they have 2 brew kits. They've got one 500 litre and one 1000 litre brew kit, and they've been gradually expanding their fermentation capacity over the years. But in 2018 they also started cultivating their own hops in a field about 20 minutes drive away from the house, and they've been working to build up this hop harvest every year. But they started canning their beers in 2019, and they released their first cans in the September of that year as well, and I think that's about the time that I first encountered this brewery, if memory serves me correctly. But over the last few years, they've been continuing to build up their sales and build up their fermentation capacity and get their beers out there a little bit more. And as of September 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 120 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Vertere for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. This is yet another one that I picked up from the wonderful Gur Beer in the One Mall in Chimsha in Kowloon here in Hong Kong. They seem to be getting a fairly regular supply of Japanese beers actually, which is definitely good to see. But yeah, if you are interested in the Japanese beer scene too, make sure you check out my friend Nevitt over at Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. I'm pretty sure he's reviewed a couple of things from Vertere as well. But yeah, I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on the can here. This one is kind of interesting. It's pretty much similar to what we've seen from Vertere before. They like to name their beers after, you know, different, you know, genus and species and classes and stuff like this from the scientific naming system. So Zenobia apparently is an old Syrian queen who was known for her intellectualism actually. So yeah, that is a name that's obviously been used in the animal class system. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. This one is 350 milliliters, which is a very common measurement in Japan. But like I said to you, a sour triple IPA at 10% ABV. And I've got the stats of this beer as well actually, so let me just look at that for you. So this one is hopped with Idaho 7, Motueka and Mosaic. We know these hops quite well. Idaho 7's from the US, about 14% alpha acid in it. Very often gives you these really soft tropical fruit notes, lots of juicy mango, apricots, pineapples, papayas, stuff like this. Motueka is a New Zealand hop, 8% alpha acid, and for me it always gives you that kind of big juicy limey character. And then you have Mosaic in this one too, which is a slightly older hop, American once again, 14% alpha acid. It's got that distinctive little earthy note in its green component, and then the big tangerine characters. But the malt base in this one is 2-row Pilsner, flaked oat and malted wheat with some additions of lactose and dextrose in it, and then it's fermented with a mixture of English ale yeast and lactobacillus. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. Actually, a really unusual beer, this one. But like I say, we have had a sour double IPA from these guys before, if memory serves me correctly. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we get on. The Zenobia 10% sour triple IPA from Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture, over in Japan. So there we go. That looks really nice. That is very nice. So, yeah, that looks pretty damn good. So before the head on this one disappears, you can see that it's poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head there. You can see some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid. It gets a little bit foamier the further up that you go, but it looks really, really nice, this one. So yeah, you've got a lovely kind of bright yellow sort of mango juice colour to this beer, I would say. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort ball is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different kinds of IPAs, in all honesty. But yeah, this beer, it's not the soupiest and gloopiest of IPAs that you're going to come across, but it does have a little bit of that natural haze to it, and in the case of this one, it's going to be down to the use of the wheat. And was there oats in this as well? Yeah, there was flaked oats in it. So yeah, the haziness in this beer will be down to the use of oats and wheat, which is quite a common thing to do in New England IPAs, of course. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, a decent level of opacity to it. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this one when you think about it in the context of the IPA. style category. But yeah, that's everything we need to say about the appearance. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma of this one and just see what it's all about. I'm really curious about this actually. I think it'll be quite interesting. Oh yeah, it's quite it's kind of funky and slightly farmhousey in a way actually. Yeah, that's pretty unusual actually. There's not too many beers you'll come across that smell like this one. And you know, after nearly 4,500 beers on the channel now, or 4,150, whatever. After that amount of beers, you do want things that are going to test your nose and test your palate a little bit to keep it interesting. And that was the thing I kind of felt about this one, is that yeah, it will, it will certainly do that. I know that Rika-san, one of the shops I go to very often in Japan for beer is liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi in Maichi, Osaka. Is it Rika-san who runs the shop with her dad Koji? She loves sour IPAs and things like this. So yeah, she'll be probably be happy I'm reviewing this one, even though I bought it in Hong Kong rather than Japan. But yeah, this is a really interesting style of beer, and they've, a few breweries I've encountered have done them, like Vault City, for example, Vertere in Japan. I don't think too many Swedish breweries have done them actually, but if you can get the balance of them right, they can be pretty interesting and pretty funky, and that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from this beer. So let's just do as we always do. We'll break the aroma down and try and describe it a bit more in depth for you. But what I will say is that the citricy side of this beer is actually quite pungent and quite punchy almost. So yeah, interesting. But on the on that side of things, you've got a little bit of there's a good little bit of bread crust in the backbone there. I would describe that as being a little bit more of like a kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust that comes out of this one. So yeah, you've got that wholemeal brown bready bread crusty type character coming out of it. There's little touches of like woodiness and crackeriness in there, of course, as well. But there's quite a little bit of this kind of grainy wholemeal brown bready note coming out of it as well. So yeah, a good little bit of that grainy brown bready character to it. On top of that though, lots of white bread for sure. Yeah, lots of like fluffy or white bread in there, and it smells as if, like, I think the bready character comes across as being quite smooth and quite dry, and I think that's usually the dextrose, I think, gives you that kind of dry bready character in these beers actually. So yeah, the white bready character has this little bit of dryness to it, I think, because of the dextrose, but the lactose normally would kind of counter that and smoothen everything out, but the lactose is maybe a little bit harder to pick up in the aroma, of course. But yeah, you can certainly smell with this beer at the back of the nose, there's a little bit of that wheaty, bitey sort of thing coming out of it, and you can smell like a more dense wheaty white bread as well. You have to remember with the likes of wheat and oats, they can vary a little bit depending on where they're from. For example, American wheat is very smooth, European wheat is a little bit more kind of bitey, I would say. European oats are a bit creamier, whereas American oats are a little bit more porridgey. And with it being Japan, they probably produce a little bit of it themselves in, like, Hokkaido and things. But potentially, most malt that Japanese breweries use is imported. So yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together, and the malty side of this beer is quite interesting, because the wheaty notes that you get out of it and the slightly more bitey character of the wheat, it gives you that impression of it sort of promotes that slightly sharper citricy note from the lactobacillus. So yeah, that's interesting too. So you can smell that lactobacillus-y citricy sharpness in the top of the nose. On top of all of that though, you've got a really nice I would say oaty character to this one. There's a little bit of that creamy oaty note to it, a little bit of a kind of drier oaty character as well, and then yeah, you have this yeah, you've got the drier oatiness in there, the creamier oats, then a wee bit of that like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy character coming out of the beer too, and that will of course be the kind of boozier side of things. So yeah, wee bit of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch. There's a little bit of like biscuit in there, McVitie's Digestive Biscuit. There is Pilsner malt in this one, so probably the biscuity character's coming from that. And I think, you know, some of the dryness that we're getting out of this will be attributable to the Pilsner malt as well. But yeah, there's quite a little bit going on in the malt base in this beer, and I think it's often underestimated how important the malt base is in many of these IPAs. But obviously with this one being a sour triple IPA, there is a bit more emphasis on the yeast in this case. But yeah, the yeasty notes at the back of the nose in this one are quite interesting. So you've got a wee bit of like a kind of brown bready sort of character in there. There's a little bit of you've got a little bit of the kind of brown bready character. You've got a little bit of like Jacob's cream cracker and a wee bit of, I would say, yeah, a wee bit of Jacob's cream cracker, a wee bit of kind of brown bread and stuff like that. And yeah, there's a wee bit of that more kind of farmhousey type character to this beer as well in that sense. It does have a few kind of saison-like qualities, I would say. So that's kind of an interesting point to make. Now, when it comes to the hoppy side of things, this beer actually does have a fairly pungent green component to it, which is interesting. So yeah, for me, the green component of this beer really leans towards that very big, bright, floral sort of character. So when it comes to IPAs, there are three types of hoppings that you can use. You can use early edition hopping, which is all about the bitterness usually. It gives you that deeper, danker green component. You do that within the first hour of your wort boil. You've got late edition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of your wort boil. Little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and it's going to give you a very bright green component. And then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That is all about flavour and aroma, and all about flavour and aroma, and it's going to give you a very bright green component once again. West Coast IPAs tend to use all three types of hopping, which is why it's deeper, danker and more kind of bitter normally, whereas New England IPAs use a lot more like late edition and dry hopping, not so much early edition hopping. So yeah, things to think about in that case. But yeah, with this beer, I get the impression that this is more relying on late edition and dry hopping for sure, just because the green component is more bright. But let's have a little look at the green component and the fruity side of things then, just to round off the aroma. So yeah, for me, the green component of this beer, it's got a little bit of earthiness to it. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that going on here, a little touch of earthiness. That's going to be mosaic that's giving you that. Maybe a teeny bit of herbal woody character as well, but overwhelmingly this one leans toward that kind of floral aromatic side of things, and it's got a good little bit of spicy character to it as well. So yeah, there's a good little bit of spiciness in there. Some really nice kind of brighter grassy characters as well, and a wee bit of zestiness too. But yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is really nice. So big floral aromaticity, nice grassy zestiness in there, and yeah, the way that that pieces together is really good. So I like the big green component this one has, and that kind of amplifies the sort of sour side of this sour IPA as well, we can see. So on the fruity side of things, now if you sugar it up, it's a little, because of the lactobacillus, I think it's a wee bit hard to detect some of the subtleties of the different fruits and stuff like this. But I am getting a little bit of the lime from the Motueka at the front of the nose, and I'm getting a wee bit of the orange from the mosaic. But I will say that you can get a little bit of them, but I think the softer fruits that you'd expect from the Idaho 7 are a bit hard to find in the nose, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's interesting for sure, but as I say, aroma, this one, the sour IPAs are not that common to find these days. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just see what you feel is going on with the aroma in this one before you get stuck into it. But yeah, I do like how this goes together. I have to say that. Big thumbs up to Vertere. Once again, I think we're going to have an interesting beer in our hands with this. But yeah, this one is the Zenobia, a 10% sour triple IPA from Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture. in Japan. I think this is going to be really good. 10% ABV. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and kanpai. Yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really quite nice. It's a big thumbs up from me, like I say. It's one of the ones where I think it shows more of its IPA character into the aftertaste, whereas the Impact is more of the kind of sour side of things. But I like this, I do like this. I think this style does work a little bit better as an imperial rather than a kind of regular, if that makes sense. At the lower ABVs, I don't think this works quite as well. So, yeah, where do we go from here? Yeah, it's giving you everything you kind of want. You've got that nice kind of sour impact at the start, then the more bready character into the middle, and then the aftertaste is more about the fruit and some of the sourness coming back. So a really interesting beer, this one, and almost quite summery in a sense. Yeah. So let's just break the flavour of this one down, then describe it more in depth as we always do. I keep getting an itchy nose. But yeah, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely, fresh, kind of white bready hedgehog bread crusty roll in there. I really do like how that goes together. Further forward on that, you get a little touch of woodiness out of this one. So yeah, fresh brown bready bread crust in there, a little bit of woodiness, and then yeah, there's a wee touch of like Jacob's cream cracker in there too. So yeah, the way it goes together is quite nice. So yeah, the crackery note, the white bready bread crust in this one's nice. You've got that little bit of woodiness in there, and then yeah, the Jacob's cream cracker coming out of it as well. But yeah, on top of that, you get a nice brown bready note to it. Yeah, for me, there's definitely a little bit of that more kind of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one, and then there's the white bready notes above that. So the white bready character in this one's actually got a little bit more density to it, and it's quite smooth and leaning toward the drier end of things. Again, I think that's the dextrose that's doing that. So yeah, bread crust, cracker, brown bread, white bread, and then above that you've got the more dense white bready character as well, which is wheat, and that's the wheaty white bread that's coming out of this one. So yeah, the white bready characters that are coming out of this one are yeah, the white bready characters that are coming out of this one are really quite nice. As I say, you've got that white bready, that soft white bready character, and they're the more dense white bready wheat. And I would say that further back on that middle third of your palate, you get the slightly more bitey character of the wheat, but otherwise it's very smooth as you come further forward. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward and more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of smooth bready note coming out of this one. But then above that, you've got the nice kind of creamy, yeah, you've got the nice kind of creamy characters from the oat above that. But yeah, at the back of that middle third of your palate, there's more of a, yeah, there's a bit more of the kind of dryness from the Pilsner malt in there as well. But yeah, the oaty, creamy side of the beer, yeah, down the middle line of your palate, you get that oaty kind of creamy note out of it. Then as you push out toward the edges of the tongue, it's a little bit more of a, yeah, it's got a little bit more of a drier oatiness, I would say. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But yeah, the drier oaty notes from this one are quite nice as well. But in the dead centre of your palate, there's a little bit of that like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of note to it. And then as you move out, toward the edges of the palate again, you start to get some of the McVitie's digestive biscuity notes that I was picking up in the nose, and that again, that's attributable to the Pilsner malt most likely. So yeah, these layers in the middle of your palate are quite nice. Yeah, I do like how all of that pieces together in this one. It gets a big thumbs up from me. The malty side of this one is really nice. And I think once your palate adjusts to this, the addition of that lactobacillus there, it kind of just sits on top of everything, gives you that wee bit of citricy sharpness. But yeah, it goes together pretty well. Yeah, so on the the back third of your palate, then we'll go there. So I've often said the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, the white bread in the middle, and the more kind of wheaty, bitey white bread on top. But the base of that back third of your palate, a little bit more kind of Jacob's, no, maybe not yet. You've got the bread crust in there, the cracker, the brown bready layer, which is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy, but a wee bit drier, and above that the white bready layer, which again is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. And then yeah, you get the wheaty notes. Yeah, there's a little bit of the more kind of wheaty character sitting above that, and the wheat is a little bit smoother, but it's also got a wee bit more kind of bitiness to it as well, which is nice. But yeah, it's good. Yeah, on top of all of that, you've got the yeasty side of this beer, and the yeasty side of the beer is kind of interesting for me because at the dead centre you've got this more kind of like brown bready type character, like a kind of grainy brown bread. Then around the edge you've got this more dense kind of sweet white bread. Yeah, you've got this more dense sweet white bread, and then around the very edge of that you've got a more Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But then it all feels like it's wrapped in this like oily, kind of waxy, sour, citricy type thing, and that of course is the lactobacillus. So it's like at its core, it's the English ale yeast, but then it's just wrapped in this like lactobacillus sour type character. And as I say, I really quite like that. I think it's pretty good. But yeah, the flavour profile of this one from the malty and yeasty side of things is nice, but definitely, yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel your flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I like that about this one. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So, hoppy side of things, the green component, the back corners of the palate, you've got that nice kind of slightly earthy, yeah, you've got that nice kind of slightly earthy character in this one. But then as you move further forward from that, it's, yes, you've got the little bit of earthiness in there, you've got that little bit of kind of woody character. Then as you move further forward from that, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of floral aromatic kind of note coming out of the beer. So the earthiness will come from the mosaic, obviously, and then you get that wee bit herbal woody thing. But yeah, the floral aromaticity comes out as you go further forward. But yeah, for me, the round the front curve of the tongue, you definitely get this more kind of juicy. You get a little bit of that more kind of like grassy zestiness coming out of it, which I think is really nice. And yeah, the sort of, I think the lactobacillus in this one's kind of pushing against that a little bit. So you have this really citricy vibe around the edge of your tongue too. But let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. So in the base, you've got the brown bready character, the white bready notes, and then the kind of wheaty, bitey character above that. But yeah, the base of that, the base of that front third of your palette, you've got the brown bready bread, white bready hedgehog bread crust in there, the Jacob's cream cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, and the kind of smoother wheaty character coming out of this one. But yeah, the way that that goes together is really, really nice. And then on top of that, you're getting that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters will just roll their way out of the beer. And again, this is leaning toward the more citricy side of things. So let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, fruity side of the beer. Yeah, for me, the lactobacillus is kind of like enveloping everything on that oily bubble, but as I say, I think the Idaho 7 takes a bit of a back seat in this one, and it's the Motueka and the Mosaic that are coming out a wee bit more. So if you go to the back of that front third of your palette, maybe there's on that oily bubble, there's maybe like a little bit of kind of softer passion fruit at the back, and then as you come further forward, a bit of juicy mango and some kind of apricot-y notes in the middle of the oily bubble. But then yeah, when you go into the front half of it, those flavours are a lot more pungent. You've got the mosaic-y tangerine orange on top coming out, and then yeah, you've got that really juicy and quite citric-y lime in this case from the Motueka coming out of this one. But yeah, the sort of the impact of the lactobacillus in this one is quite pronounced, I would say. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is quite interesting. But this overall, this is a really, really nice beer. As I say, you don't come across sour IPAs all that often. And Vertere do some pretty good ones. I think it works quite well. The bigger malty character that this one has balances out the sourness quite well. I'd be curious to know about the hopping ratios and stuff with it, but all in all, it's an interesting beer, and as you'd expect with Vertere, it's very well done. So big thumbs up to them for this. This is something that's a bit of a novelty for me, in honesty. But yeah, definitely worth trying, I have to say that. So I hope that this review feels a little bit more disjointed compared with some others, but I hope you've kind of enjoyed my sort of flavour description of this one. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's a little bit more, it's kind of top end to mid-bodied, I would say. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one, almost non-existent. The beer has this kind of slightly oily and silky kind of mouthfeel to it, which I really like. So yeah, that's something that I think, and I think it suits the kind of sour side of it. Because it's a sour beer, we need to talk about impact, and that, you know, on top of that kind of oily bubble that we were talking about, you get that big citricy sharpness that comes in with a bit of a punch at the start, then it just mellows out the further you go into the aftertaste with the beer. But yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really nice. So the citricy sharpness that you get out of this one is great. Then it just really mellows out very nicely, like I said. But on the the malty side of things, I would say there's a little bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a wee bit of sweetness on top. But then again, it's kind of engulfed by this oily kind of character from the lactobacillus, which I think is quite interesting. But it's not going to blow the head off you in terms of sourness. Likewise, the IBU in this beer is probably about like 30 or 40 or something like that, which isn't which isn't unusual. But yeah, the way that all of that goes together is quite nice, I would say. Yeah, all in all, I think the fruity, the way that everything goes together in this beer is really nice, and for me it's something different after so many beers. I think that's the way to put it. But I will say the lactobacillus in this one does kind of dominate the flavour a little bit, but in a nice way. It doesn't overly dominate, if that makes sense. But if you buy a sour IPA, you kind of expect that. So yeah, all in all, a really interesting beer. This one different from the other things I've been drinking recently, and it keeps things interesting. And Vertere are pretty good with this sour IPA style, I will say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Zenobia, a 10% sour triple IPA from Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture, over in Japan. Let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vertere as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Vertere's social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very shortly. Ciao just now.